Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and in-betweeners, my name's Dan. Welcome back to another PAP Reports. Today is Friday, April 17th, 2020. And today we start with a document that was issued in the past couple of days regarding what constitutes a reasonable excuse to go out during lockdown. First of all, let me say that this document is overall, in my opinion, a complete pile of horseshit. The document, which is being used as guidance to police in England, in my opinion, is full of holes and yet again gives the police scope to use their imaginative discretion to abuse us all. In fact, when you consider that the lockdown is in place to prevent the spread of the virus, why then is it reasonable that people can move to a friend's address for a calling off period following arguments at home? Kind of breaks the back of this whole do not socialise rhetoric that we're being pounded with. Don't get me wrong. I fully understand that those in abusive relationships, for example, need to get away, and we can't expect them to stay where they are in order to be abused. But if it's so important to keep socially distanced from one another, why allow people to go to friends for a few days? The guidance, which has of course been produced by the National Police Chiefs Council and the College of Policing, appears to be drawn from guidelines issued by the Crown Prosecution Service. The guidance explains in a broad way what's likely to constitute reasonable for key categories. For example, it says buying food for several days, including luxury items and alcohol, is likely to be reasonable, but says there is no need for all of a person's shopping to be of basic food supplies. I mean, who is it that determines what a family eats? It's already been established that if a shop is open, then they can sell anything on its shelves. The police nor the government have any right to tell us what we can or cannot buy when we go to a shop that's open. If you're a single parent, for example, and you have several children, you're going to need snacks, a lot of them, in order to keep the kids off your back and stop them from stressing you out. In my opinion, snacks are essential. It's highly unlikely that a person is going to go to the supermarket to spend hours lining up before being rushed through your shopping and out the door again to only be going to buy snacks, but it may well constitute a majority of the shopping. However, this, based on the guidance, could see you out of your home non-essentially. It also says that people are not allowed to buy paint and brushes simply to redecorate a kitchen, but can purchase tools and supplies to repair a fence damaged in recent bad weather. However, the guidance also states that the regulations specify maintenance and upkeep. This does not extend to renovation and improvements. But painting can and often is part of maintenance, especially in a rented accommodation. So how is it going to pan out when you get stopped with a tin of Dulux Magnolia, a 2-inch paintbrush and a roller? Are you going to have to invite the jackboots round to verify that you're maintaining your property? Under the guidance, police are advised not to intervene if people stop to rest or eat lunch while on a long walk, but short walks to sit on a park bench are not allowed. But what about those elderly who have to sit at short intervals? People with COPD, asthma or other health conditions that prevent them from exercising for prolonged periods of time. National Police Chiefs and the College of Policing are so far out of touch with reality, it's unbelievable, and the entire guidance is, in my opinion, complete toilet paper. Let's take a look at the actual document itself. Okay, so what constitutes a reasonable excuse to leave the place where you live? Regulation 6 of the Health Protection Coronavirus Restrictions England Regulations 2020 states that no person may leave the place where they live without a reasonable excuse. This does not apply to homeless people. Crown Prosecution Service have produced a really useful practical guide, very important, as to what might and what might not, two more very important words, constitute a reasonable excuse, which is another very important word. They have kindly allowed us to reproduce this to help officers. However, each case still needs to be considered based on the individual facts as they present themselves. Some public statements made soon after the adoption of the regulation suggest that members of the public could only leave their homes if essential to do so. However, this is not the test set out in the regulations, and there is no legal basis for a requirement in those terms to be imposed. The applicable threshold is that of reasonable excuse. This list is not exhaustive and officers are required to use their discretion, there's that word again, and judgment in deciding what is and what isn't reasonable in the circumstances. That initial paragraph, or those two paragraphs there, should make you very worried. So what do we have? Likely to be reasonable, buying several days worth of food, including luxury items and alcohol. Now, unfortunately, not everybody can afford to buy several days of food at a time. They cannot afford to buy food that may go to waste. Therefore, that very first likely to be reasonable is crap. Second, buying a small amount of staple items or necessity, e.g. a newspaper, pet food, a loaf of bread or a pint of milk. I wonder why newspaper is a necessity. And collecting surplus basic food items from a friend. It says there that there is no examples of things that are not likely to be reasonable. So let's think about it. If there is nothing there that would be likely to be unreasonable, then you should pretty much be able to go and buy what the fuck you like based on the CPS guidelines. So look at the comments. It says there is no need for all a person's shopping to be basic food supplies. Why not? Is basic food supplies things like milk and bread? They're basics, aren't they? So why would there be no need for a person's shopping to be basic food supplies? The purchase of snacks and luxuries is still permitted. In general terms, a person has a reasonable excuse to visit the shops which remain open to customers under the regulations. If a person is already out of the address with good reason, then it would not be proportionate to prevent the person from buying non-essential items. There is no proportionality to preventing people from buying anything they fucking want. Food items include hot food from takeaways. Obtain includes purchasing, but could include collecting or sharing items, providing this is genuine. Who makes that determination whether it's genuine or not? Can the police simply turn around and say, I don't believe you, here's a fine? Of course they can. Let's move on. Buying tools and supplies to repair fence panel damaged in recent bad weather may be likely to be reasonable. However, buying paint and brushes simply to redecorate a kitchen is not likely to be reasonable. Well, in my tenancy agreement, it says that I have to keep the place in good condition. That includes, and we're talking about maintenance here, that includes keeping the walls in good condition, painting the walls, painting the doors if there's damage to them. So people can and will need to go and buy things like paint and brushes to keep their home in general maintenance order and upkeep. Clearly, I don't think anybody's going to be extending to renovation and home improvements at this time, seeing as things like that require manpower and items that likely are unavailable to buy because the shops are shut. But paint and brushes, remember, if a shop is open, we've already been told we can buy what the fuck we want from an open shop. Therefore, if you go to a DIY store and they're selling paint and brushes, you can buy them. Moving on. Likely to be reasonable, including going for a run or cycle or practicing yoga, walking in the countryside or in cities, attending an allotment. Now I'll tell you now, what gets me here, practicing yoga. Does yoga not mean sitting down? In some cases, I understand there are lots of different types of yoga moves, but there are some which mean sitting down. So your entire exercise could be based on being sat down. So why are they telling people that you are not allowed to sit down while you're out exercising for prolonged periods of time? That does not make any sense. If you're caught sitting down on the grass, who's to say you're not doing yoga? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Driving to the countryside is likely to be reasonable if you're driving there to walk, where more walking is done than driving. Driving for a prolonged period with only brief exercise is likely to be not reasonable. However, there are some people who find it very difficult to exercise in towns and cities because of the pollution, for example. And so to exercise, they may find it difficult to breathe in that kind of environment. Now, I'm not giving you ideas of how to get away with doing certain things. I'm just giving you my opinion. Okay, so what I'm telling you here is not what you should be saying to the police, because the police have their discretion, and it pretty much doesn't matter what you say. If they've got the ump with you, or if they don't like you for some reason, they are going to stitch you up regardless. Stopping to rest or to eat while on a long walk is likely to be reasonable. However, a short walk to the park bench, when the person remains seated for a much longer period, is deemed to be not reasonable. Again, I fall back to the point that there are many elderly folk out there that want to go out for some exercise but cannot do an awful lot of walking. There may be people that are recovering from illness or from injury that may not be able to walk but must do some walking. They may need to sit down for long periods of time, but who makes the determination? The police, based on how they feel at the time. Exercising more than once per day is reasonable. The only relevant consideration is whether repeated exercise on the same day can be considered as a reasonable exercise for leaving home. Well, of course it can. I personally don't think, in my opinion, that doing the same kind of exercise multiple times a day is a problem. In my opinion, I don't see how anybody can make that an unlawful or illegal act and fine you for it. That would, in my opinion, be an unlawful fine. With regards to work, key workers or other essential worker travelling to work where it's not possible to work from home is reasonable. A non-key worker or non-essential key worker travelling to work where it is not reasonably possible to work from home is likely to be reasonable. And a person delivering food packages to vulnerable people is likely to be reasonable. However, a person who can work from home choosing to work in a local park is unreasonable. Well, I don't think anybody would want to go out and work in the park anyway, in my opinion, but there you go. A person knocking on doors offering to do cash in hand work, clearly that's not reasonable. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. And it does say that there is no requirement to be a key worker or essential worker in order to travel to work. Anyone can travel to work if it is not reasonably possible to work from home. A request from an employer to attend a workplace should be sufficient, but there is no requirement for the person to have any written proof of a need to go to work or volunteering. Police should not ask for ID documents or any other kind of document. There is no requirement for volunteers to work or for a registered organisation or charity. There is no requirement for the volunteering to be related to COVID-19. So basically, you can go out, tell the police you're going to work, and the police have got no right, as it says there. Basically, the police should not ask for ID documents or any other kind of document, and there's no requirement for the person to have any written proof of a need to go to work or volunteering. That being said, the police also have no right to ask you where you're going or where you've come from. Let me rephrase that. They can ask you, but you are under no obligation to tell them where you've been, where you're going. Last page. Other reasons likely to be reasonable: taking an animal for treatment, moving to a friend's address for several days to allow a calling off following arguments at home, or providing support to vulnerable people. Not likely to be reasonable: visiting a vet surgery in person to renew a prescription, where this could be done over the phone. Obviously, even I do my prescriptions online. So yeah, I agree that that's not necessarily a reasonable excuse to be out and about. The whole moving to a friend's address for several days to allow a calling off following arguments at home, I think, is key here, because we've been told no socialising. If you go to a friend's house for a couple of days and then move back to yours, and then you move out again for a couple of days and then move back to yours, and maybe that person's got pissed off with you staying there, so you go to a different friend's house for a couple of days and then go back to yours, is that, or is that not, potentially going to be spreading a virus if one of those people have it? Well, of course it is. So why are we all told we're not allowed to socialise when clearly some people are? However, visiting a friend in their address or meeting in public to socialise is not likely to be reasonable. So how about you go and visit your friend for a few days? What's to stop people, everybody, going and staying with a friend for a couple of days before going home again? and then going to spend time with another friend for a couple of days. Nothing. There's nothing stopping you from doing that based on these guidelines from the Crown Prosecution Service, which makes this entire document of what constitutes a reasonable excuse complete and utter toilet paper. Now, the addition of these extra guidance for the police does nothing for spreading, except for spreading the police's perceived authority over the population using ridiculous and ever more draconian measures, most of which are completely against our human rights, albeit human rights do have a caveat that they can be restricted for periods of time in exceptional circumstances. Although this could be seen as an exceptional circumstance, I personally, and this is only my belief that most of these measures being put in place are a breach of those exceptional circumstances too. 51-year-old Jacqueline Oakes was murdered in her flat in Edgbaston, Birmingham in 2014 by her abusive ex-partner. An investigation into the incident and surrounding the way West Midlands Police handled the situation gave way to, at the time, the IOPC's biggest ever investigation, where the actions of 40 West Midlands Police staff were investigated. The investigation came about as Jenny Oakes, Jacqueline's daughter, said that she'd still have been alive if police had listened and taken her seriously. Jenny said she phoned the police, I think, 19 times, and they never listened to her. They never took her seriously. If they had listened to her and they had done their background checks on the other person, she would still be here. As a result of the investigation, it was deemed that errors by police and control room staff had been made, and that 19 of the 40 investigated had a case to answer for misconduct. However, not a single one of them lost their job as a result. The IOPC said at the time that 2 officers were to attend misconduct meetings, with others subjected to management action to address the failings. Jenny Oakes said, all we ever wanted was for someone to say sorry. Unfortunately, when it comes to the police, I have learnt that sorry is not in their vocabulary. Well, it may be 6 years later, but Jacqueline's children have finally had some kind of closure on the death of their mother, albeit likely not the closure they would have preferred. Jacqueline's children, Jenny, Maria and Rafi, were awarded an undisclosed amount payout from the West Midlands Police Force for breaches under the Human Rights Act. Although, as we all know, it's not actually from the force itself, but from the money given to the force, paid for by the public. Hence why they never learn their lessons. In a statement, West Midlands Police said it had responded to a letter of claim from the family of the victim denying any liability in her death. Subsequently, both parties agreed a settlement without going to formal court proceedings. Of course, you deny liability, as you always do, but then you make an out-of-court settlement for being not guilty of anything. Well, that makes lots of sense, doesn't it? Unbelievable. A couple in a Croydon park were filmed knocking boots on April the 7th during the period of lockdown by a curious walker who was said to have been horrified. The walker, who did not want to be named, said that she was on her daily walk when she noticed a man on top of the woman with their trousers pulled down slightly. She said she noticed the pair as she went to take a photo of the sunset in Lloyd Park. I wonder if taking photos of sunsets is in the new guidance on essential reasons to be stopping while exercising. No wonder she didn't want to be named. The woman then said she decided to film the couple so she could report them to the police, and she was left so horrified she couldn't speak. She told My London, I was shocked to see a couple rolling around, and I thought they were initially dry humping as they both had jeans on. The elderly couple near me looked very visibly upset. It really annoyed me, as this is very much a family park and I had seen children, dogs and the elderly on my walk. So I decided to take a video and picture and go to the police station to report this gross public misconduct. Then I realised they were actually having full sex, as both their jeans were open and pulled down slightly. I honestly wanted to say something and let them know it was so inappropriate, but I was so shocked to my core I could not speak. She said she later decided against reporting the couple over fears authorities would shut the park due to people not following social distancing rules. As I left the park, I thought about the police closing the park during the lockdown due to visitors misbehaving, and I thought I could not risk it as so many innocent people enjoy this park every day. So I decided against reporting it. or was it over fears that they might charge you for voyeurism? The following is an extract straight out of the Sun newspaper. Yes, I know. The government has said you should only be going out once a day to buy food for health reasons, to exercise, or go to work if you cannot work from home. Everyone is instructed to practice social distancing when in public. Social distancing simply means keeping your distance from other people. It means, where possible, everyone is encouraged to stay at home, only going out to exercise in small family groups or shops. Wrong. The government has not said that at all, and there is nothing to prevent you leaving your house 10 times a day if you want to, because let's face it, it would be a little bit difficult to leave your house once per day for health reasons, for exercise, to buy food and to go to work. As for social distancing, that doesn't count for those in the same household. But yet mainstream media seem to be forgetting that important factor, in line with the government's rhetoric. I mean, wouldn't what the couple were doing be easily classed as exercise? A big thank you to Patreon supporters Adi, Audrey, Carl, Cotwatch UK, Danielle, Dave, Dean, Holly, Ian, Jay, Marty Ladd, Mr. Mina, Peter, President Trump and Rich. Your support is helping me to continue giving this daily content. Still thinking about the two knocking boots in Croydon. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, don't go knocking boots in parks, film the police and other officials.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.